Hello everyone, so welcome to my channel. Today we'll be talking about a protocol known as SSH, or also known as Secure Shell. We'll be discussing about the history of SSH, how SSH works, why do we need SSH, some real-world use cases of SSH, and using SSH in a Linux environment. So the history of SSH. So it was created by a person, I may pronounce this wrong, Tatsu Yolnen at Helsinki University of Technology. It was created to replace Telnet and older protocols that we used back in the day, such as our login for network communication. Now these protocols may be functional, but they weren't secure at transmitting data, such as passwords, because they would send it in plain text. So anyone running a password sniffer, such as maybe Wireshark, would be able to eavesdrop in this communication. So Tatsu developed SSH in 1995 in response to an attack that happened at the Helsinki University in Finland. After this, he created SSH1, which was publicly released in 1995. However, there were some security vulnerabilities, but it did garner quite a lot of popularity. Then he wrote SSH2, which was an improvement over SSH1 with improved security and new features such as port forwarding. So why do we need SSH in the first place? Well, imagine you are sending an email or postcard or like a letter to a friend, and you only want that friend to read it. However, someone got their hands on it, and now they're able to read your private letter that you were sending to your friend, and you wouldn't want that, right? So this is a problem with regular communication. Imagine you have one computer known as the client or a home PC, and you want to connect to a server and talk to it. And in this case, it's the remote PC, right? Now, in this case, there is no encryption. There's no way to securely send this data without someone eavesdropping on this communication. So for example, if you send a note, right, you don't want anyone else reading it. However, if you're not using any encryption, then a potential hacker could be able to listen to this communication and eavesdrop on what you are sending. This is where SSH comes into play. SSH connects in a secure fashion and creates a encrypted tunnel for that note to travel in. This way, no one can access your communication and no one can eavesdrop in this communication line. It makes an encrypted form and scrambles all the data you are sending from the home PC to the remote PC. And basically how this encryption process occurs is in SSH, first you need to validate your identity. Do you have access or are you allowed to remotely access this server/machine? Well, it does this validation by using a public key and a private key. The public key is open for anyone to use, while the private key is confidential and is securely kept away. The remote PC will use its public key to encrypt a message, and this message is sent back to the home PC. The home PC receives this message and decrypts it with its private key. And if the home PC is able to send this decrypted message back to the remote PC, the remote PC knows that the home PC has the correct or the rights to access this computer, or SSH into this computer, in other words. And after this authentication process is validated, they can start encrypting their traffic and sending data between themselves. And they use something called symmetric encryption, where they use the same session key to encrypt and decrypt traffic that is going between the tunnel from the home PC and the remote PC. And they also use key exchange algorithms such as Diffie-Hellman to securely create a shared secret you can kind of think of between a client and a server. And the secrets, are the session keys that are used to encrypt and decrypt the data. So some additional information on SSH. SSH runs on port 22 and uses TCP, or Transmission Control Protocol. Some real-world examples could be, for example, your web developer logging into the back end of a website and you want to add like a file, and the thing is you are in like an unsecure area such as a coffee shop. Well, now you can securely log in using SSH, which will encrypt all your data. And then also like maybe students connecting to a remote lab provided by the school, you would want all the data that is being sent in this connection to be encrypted as well. And in case the student is connecting via an insecure network, such as an open Wi-Fi or a hotspot, then using SSH would be a good idea to encrypt all the traffic between the server and the student's computer. So to summarize, SSH was invented for security purposes. It was invented for communication between a client and a server to communicate privately without the worry of someone interfering and intercepting their traffic. SSH allows us to establish a secure connection to a remote device. And it does this through key exchange algorithms such as Diffie-Hellman, and parameters such as encryption are all exchanged between the server and the client. However, that's a story for another day since that's a bit more complex. But the main purpose that you should take away from this lesson is SSH fights off eavesdroppers and packet sniffers. So your data that you're sending from your computer to the server is all safe and sound. Before SSH, we had rlogging and telnet, which sent data in the clear. And thankfully, we have something known as secure shell. And with our ever-expanding internet, it's always important to consider security as our first line of defense. I'll now be showing how to connect from a Windows computer to a Linux computer using SSH from a command line. So moving on, we'll be installing an OpenSSH server on our Kali Linux machine or any Debian-based machine, such as Ubuntu, Kali, and we'll be connecting to it via a Windows command line. And you can also do this on Red Hat Linux as well and other distributions. You might just want to search up instead it might be yum instead of apt-get, but the commands should be very similar. So first we'll start with sudo apt-get install OpenSSH-server. So this will install our OpenSSH server. I'll be listening on port 22. Now we have to check the status of the server. Is it on? Is it listening to port 22, which is the port that is used to listen to potential SSH connections. So we'll do sudo systemctl status SSH. So yes, at the moment it is currently active and it is running and the SSH service is enabled. So that is good. So by enabled, this SSH service will also be loaded on boot. And to do that, if you want to load this SSH service on boot, you just do enable SSH. And if you want to disable it, you can do sudo systemctl disable SSH. And then in this case, if I do sudo systemctl status SSH, as you can see, it is disabled on boot. So, and you can also see that the server is listening on port 22 and it's waiting for a potential connection. So now we can also do a connection from our Windows command line. However, I just want to briefly go over troubleshooting steps, and if anyone's having issue, you can also do a quick restart of your SSH by doing this. Sudo systemctl restart SSH if there's any issues. And if you have further issues, you might want to look them up and see what could be the possible causes. However, I will now go on to showing you how we can connect to our SSH server through a Windows command line. So now I have my command line or my command prompt from my Windows machine. So first thing I will do is get the IPv4 address of my Kali Linux machine. So we can do this IP and then -4 address show. So right here, inet. So this is how you can get the IP address version 4 for your Ubuntu or Debian based machine. And F0 right here is my Ethernet cable, my Ethernet interface, I should say. And the inet or the IPv4 address is 192.168.0.181. Okay, and if for anyone curious, LO just means loopback. This is just basically the computer talking to itself, but we won't get into any networking knowledge or any nitty gritties, but I will just briefly explain. This is the loopback address, and then right here, or this is the loopback interface, and then this is the loopback address right here. Anything that starts with 127 be your loopback address almost every single time, but we'll be more focused on the inet, which is our IPv4 address. So let's go back to our Windows command prompt. And now that we know the IP address of our Kali Linux machine, we can do SSH, which is the command. We will specify our machine name, or the account name that we're trying to connect to, at 192.168.0.181, which is the private IP address of our Kali Linux machine. I'll hit enter. It's asking for a password, so in this case, I'm using password as an authentication method to connect to my Kali Linux machine. So I'll just type in my password, hit enter, and now I am in my Kali Linux machine, and I can now execute commands remotely from a command line interface. And then I can also just check host name, who am I? And then right here you have host name, Kali, who am I, Kali. So as you can see, everything works correctly, and that is how you can use SSH in a real world environment. So thank you guys for listening. I hope you learned something new, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.